just really feel that love, that friendship, that solidarity, connection. So when one time is said, then we take it seriously. I mean, just to say that I didn't listen or I ignored or, it's just show love and show like uh, Imam Hussein, show that family. This is important. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا ابن رسول الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة وباب نجاة الأمة يا مصباح الهدى وقرة عين المصطفى يا مظلوم يا سيد الشهداء. Today is the first day of Muharram. Tomorrow, the second, is the day that the caravan of Karbala arrived. You know that Imam Hussein left the city of Medina on 27th of Rajab, month of Rajab. A week later, on Sha'ban 3rd of Sha'ban, they arrived in Mecca. And they were in Mecca for those months of Sha'ban and Ramadan and Shawwal and Dhul Qa'dah. And then on the 8th of the Hajj, they left Mecca for Kufa and finally Karbala, arriving Karbala on day like tomorrow, the second day of Muharram. So you see that this was like 7-8 months of journey. And it's very heartbreaking because, this is a family of the Holy Prophet, and they didn't have security in their own city that they were born. They have to leave the city. And they get to Mecca, a sacred house of God that should be secure for everyone. And Ahlul Bayt had no security, even this site of Masjid al-Haram, the house of God. And they had to leave for Kufa, that they were invited to be leading the community, and they were stopped from entering Kufa. And finally, this holy family should arrive in Karbala and live in tents. Awlad al-Rasul, the grandson of Rasulullah, in his family, leaving their house and their city, and now in an area that there is nothing, there is no housing, there is no building, and they have to live in tents. It's like very similar to the situation that we see the Ahlul Bayt live in many areas now. It's very heartbreaking. But this injustice continued in the last 1400 years. Still, intimidation and injustice and oppression continues against his family. So when we talk about Imam Hussein, who is Imam Hussein? First of all, he is from the Ahlul Bayt family. Who are Ahlul Bayt? The Quran said, Ar-Rasikhuna fil ilm, the source of knowledge, As-Sadiqeen, the truthful, Khairul Bariya, the best people on this planet, رجال صدقوا ما عهدوا الله, those who were totally loyal to their covenant with their Creator, with their Lord. He is coming from this honorable background and family. But he himself, if you are looking for like a personal introduction for Imam Hussein, the best introduction comes from the messenger of God who said, إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة. He is the light of guidance. You see, we have two legacy from our Holy Prophet. One is Al-Quran and the other is Al-Itra. So the Quran and Itra, there are two main sources of Al-Hidayah. The Quran is Kitab Al-Hidayah, يهدي للتي هي أقوام, هدى للناس, هدى للمسلمين, هدى للمحسنين, هدى للمؤمنين, هدى للمتقين. There is a source of al-hidayah and guidance for all kinds of people. Everybody can get some hidayah, some in general sense, an-nas, people, and then the Muslimin, the mu'mineen, the muttaqin, the muhsinin. Different people at different quality, they get different degrees of guidance from the Quran. And this is why the Holy Prophet said, لَن يَفْتَرِغَ حَتَّى يَرِدَ عَلَيَّ الْحَوْضِ. These two lights of guidance never separate, Quran and Itra, they never separate till the day of judgment. So Imam Hussein is Misbah al-Huda, the light of guidance. And he is the one who guides us to God. First, he said, مَاذَا وَجَدَ مَنْ فَقَدَكَ وَمَا الَّذِي فَقَدَ مَنْ وَجَدَكَ. If you gain him, there is nothing that you can lose. And if you lose him, what is it that you can gain at all in your life? What is it? That is everything and everyone. Somebody came to the father of Al-Hussein, to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he said, يا أمير المؤمنين هل رأيت ربك حين عبدت. Imam Ali, you worship a lot, you do a lot of prayer for God, but did you ever see God? How you can just tell me? قال ويلك ما كنت أعبد ربا لم أره. Do you think that I would pray to God whom I can see and doesn't exist? You think I'm that simple? And the person said, oh my goodness, I didn't know. You saw your Lord, كيف رأيته? How can you see your Lord? Let me know it too. Let me see him as well. قال ويلك لا تدركه العيون في مشاهدة الأبصار. I didn't mean this small physical vision. How much we can see? We can see little thing with these eyes. How you can see the absolute existence of Wajib al-Wujud, the creator of the heavens and the earth, which is bigger than all the universes. I didn't mean with physical eyes. ولكن رأته القلوب بحقائق الإيمان. The vision of my soul, the vision of my heart. I see Allah in my heart. And that is why I worship him, because I see him, his existence, his glory, his greatness, his love, his Asma'ul Husna, beautiful names. That's how I see it. So Imam Hussein is Misbahul Huda in a sense that he guides us to a Tawheed. He is the continuity of the mission of guidance of all the messengers. This is why we have Ziyaratul Warith. Assalamu alayka ya Warith Adam Safatullah. You are the Warith. You carry the legacy of knowledge of Adam. وَنُوحٍ نَبِيِّ اللَّهِ, the patience of the Prophet Noah. وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلِ اللَّهِ, the sincerity of Abraham. وَمُوسَى كَلِيمِ اللَّهِ, the dedication of Moses. وَعِيسَى رُوحِ اللَّهِ, the sincerity of Jesus. وَمُحَمَّدٍ حَبِيبِ اللَّهِ, the love of the last messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You make a salawat like we are in the 29th of Ramadan, right? And we are in the first day of Muharram. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Muhammadin Habibillah wa Aliyin Waliyullah. So Imam Hussein is warith, representing the qualities of guidance of all these messengers, Misbahul Huda wa Safinatun Nijat. The light of guidance of Imam Hussein is not only seen during his jihad in Karbala. What we see in Imam Hussein as a freedom fighter on the land of Karbala, that is a physical fighting. That is a small, very little victory in his victory over the army of evil. The jihad and Misbahul Huda in sense of the Imam is his spiritual freedom fighting, not just physical. That is spiritual, that his victory in jihad against Jahiliyyah, against Jahl, Ash-Shaytan, and Nafsul Ammara, the anger, the arrogance, the greed, the jealousy, all of this bad quality. So he won the internal jihad, and that made the Imam Misbah al-Huda, so he can guide us and he can be the Hadi, Ahlul Hidayah, Sahib al-Hidayah. His guidance in the sense of personal life, in the sense of family life. Brother Hussein last night was talking about the family. That's a good discussion. We have the youth, the parents, children, family values. That's extremely important. And he mentioned that the tragedy of talaq in this country and even in our community. And today, after I finished Friday prayer, they brought me 5 files of divorce. I was shocked. 5 family, destruction of 5 family in one day. Usually I don't do the divorce as much as I can. I leave it for another sheikh at the House of Wisdom who is doing that. But then finally I see the files. Then they brought it and we stamp it and we do a final paperwork. And I was shocked that when I remember that he talked about this issue last night. And many times this divorce is for wrong reasons. Just because, we don't understand each other or we don't love each other. So love each other. Why you don't love each other? Love. What's wrong? Well, the divorce is for wrong reason because in many cases, marriages were for wrong reasons. I mean, the hadith said, لمالها وجمالها وحسبها ونسبها عليك بذات الدين. Sometimes marriage is for physical reason. So what's the physical reason? Is somebody, a girl is beautiful, a man is handsome, but is drinking, alcoholic, or in drugs issues. So it's not jamalaha, just physical or financial, for money. She has a good job or he has a good job, or just money issues. Physical, financial, family, because of this family and that family is important, of course. But there are some other criteria. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, alayka bidat ad-din. The first focus must be her faith, or his faith. So instead of physical, financial, family, go with faith. That is the right reason. And if people are faithful, a lot of issues are handled, a lot of issues are done if really the faith is involved. This is why the family of the Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he talked about them. He said, فَإِنِّي لَا أَعْلَمُ أَصْحَابًا أَوْفَى مِنْ أَصْحَابِي وَلَا أَهْلَ بَيْتٍ أَبَرُّ مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. My companions are the best companions, and my family are the most dedicated, the most devoted, the most loving, the most loyal families. It's important. So this is why both the Quran and Ahlul Bayt, they focus on guiding us to go through the challenges of the family. When the Quran says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. A Quranic family is that is based on peace. لِتَسْكُنُوا. You feel comfort, you feel peace when you go home. The husband, the wife, the parents, the children are sources of peace. They are peacemakers. It's not just arguing all the time and nagging all the time and fighting all the time. It's about peace. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. There is mawadda, there is love, there is friendship, there is reflection. And this comes both from the Quran and from Ahlul Bayt. The Quran is وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. This is a medicine. The guidance of the Quran is a medicine for our soul. I mean, sometimes even physically, when somebody is sick and we go to the hospital, we recite Surah Al-Fatiha, right? Or when we have a problem, Quran also deals with some physical issues, but fundamentally, when we say Quran is shifa, Quran is medicine, we don't mean that go and close all the pharmacies and say, oh, we just recite some Surah Al-Fatiha, we don't need medicine, we don't need to go a doctor. No, we still need to have a doctor because that's what the Quran tells us. Still, we need to have physical medicine. The medicine, the Quranic medicine, is about our spiritual viruses. That is the virus in minds and virus in hearts and virus in souls. That is really the time that Quran helps us and gives us comfort. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. I do this all the time. When we go through this situation in Iran or in Lebanon, in Gaza, and sometimes I'm under so much stress. I watch the news or, read the papers and follow the news every moment. And sometimes so much stress that I don't know what to do. Or say, oh God, I just pray, but I cannot change it. I cannot stop it. What can I do? And believe me, the best medicine for me at that time is just to make a little dua and open the Quran and go through some verses to get some inspiration. For example, many times I have opened the Quran and said, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. Don't worry. If you are faithful, you are the winners. Or يُرِيدُونَ لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ. I open. These are the real verses. لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَاللَّهُ مُتِمُّ نُورِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. They try to put the Nurullah, the light of the Lord of this world, they try to turn it off with their mouth, with their propaganda, with their social media, with their general media, with Fox News, with other channels. But God would complete his light, whether they like it or not like it. So this is the medicine that we are talking about, the medicine of peace for our soul. The Quran arm us with the arms of compassion, arms of reflection. So we reject those viruses, the viruses from our soul, like prejudice, lying, jealousy, greed, arrogance, selfishness, violence. These are all viruses that can be removed with the medicine of the Quran and medicine of message of Imam Hussein, because he is Misbah al-Huda. Yes, they guide us to the army of at-ta'aqul, the army of rationality, the army of wisdom. So we appreciate all these angelic qualities in our soul, the quality of love, the quality of friendship, the quality of forgiveness, reconciliation, sacrifice, solidarity, support, honesty, modesty, truthfulness, respect, responsibility, righteousness. There are all the qualities. So we get the guidance through the Quran and Ahlul Bayt on these issues. And remember that the Quran, Kitabul Hidayah, and Ahlul Bayt and Al-Imam al-Hussein, Masabihul Hidayah. They are lamps of guidance. And this is why Quran talks about Ahlul Bayt, and Ahlul Bayt, they talk about the Quran. For example, this Surah Al-Fajr in the Quran is called Surah Al-Hussein. Why is it called Surah Al-Hussein? Because at the end of this chapter, you have that famous word, when somebody dies, and especially the Shuhada, what verses we recite most? Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'innah irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. Isn't it so beautiful that when our times come and it's your turn and my turn, you see how many funerals we have in this community every day, how many shuhada we have every day back homes. Many of them, they receive this call, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutmain. O confident and peaceful heart, irja'i ila rabbik. Return to your Lord. Isn't it beautiful that at the end, you and I, we hear this word, irja'i, irja'i. Return to your Lord. Radiyatan mardiyah. Be happiness, with pleasure. You are satisfied. You have a satisfied soul, that he is satisfied with your soul and your soul is satisfied with him. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. Join my servant and come to your house, to the kingdom of your Lord. And this is what happened to Al-Imam al-Hussein and his family and his followers. And he sent us a message from his soul. He said, Shiyati mahma sharibtum ma adbin fadhkuruni aw sami'tum bigharibin aw shahidin fandubuni. Oh, my Shia, my followers, anytime that you are thirsty and you have access to pure drinking water, remember me. Anytime you see a stranger, anytime you see an innocent shaheed, a martyr, mourn for all the shuhada, for Hussein and Ashab al-Hussein wa awlad al-Hussein. ليتكم في يوم عاشوراء جميعا تنظروني كيف أستسقي لطفله فأبوا أن يرحموني. I wish you were there on that day when my baby Ali al-Asghar was totally thirsty, a baby in that weather, 120 degree. This baby was thirsty. And I called those people and I told them that if you think I'm calling for water for myself, you can take this baby and provide him some water. They heard me, but they rejected, they denied this simple request. ويلهم قد جربوا قلب الرسول قلب رسول الثقلين فلعنوهم ما استطعتم شيعتي في كل حين. Woe on them. They hurt the heart of Messenger of God. Ask God all the time to deprive them from his mercy forever. Karbala la zalat karban wa bala ma laqa indaka alul Mustafa. O land of Karbala, you stay a land of tragedy and grief forever and ever. Remember how the family of the Prophet faced with those tragedies on that day and on your land. كم على تربك لما سرعوا من دم سال ومن دمع جرى. How much tears and how much blood from the family of the Mustafa were on this land of Karbala. ووجوها كالمصابيح فمن قمر غاب والنجم قد هوى. How many of those beautiful faces, the faces full of light. You know, when you see, for example, in Junub Lebanon, and you see this photo that he was on a motorcycle or he was in a car and he just was martyred, you see these faces like so beautiful, so heavenly, like just came from paradise. He's saying that, yes, these faithful faces were like moon, like stars, so shining, the shining lights of this paradise, they were falling one after another on the land of Karbala. Ya Rasulullah, law ayantahum وهم ما بين قتلى وسبا. O Prophet, peace be upon you, if you had witnessed how the members of your family were falling as martyrs or under the arrest of the army of evil on the afternoon of Ashura. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Again, we are grateful for our guest speaker. They are not guests, they are host of House of Wisdom, Brother Hussein Charara, that we listen to his sincere presentations and nice words every night. And Brother Sayyid Alhakeem, who is coming as our beloved guest from London. We are grateful to God for this opportunity that we come here for education, for emotions, for reflection, for learning. So we welcome Brother Hussein with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
فاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. All praises be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. May His peace and blessings be on our beloved Prophet and His immaculate Ahl Bayt. Salawat. Before I begin the formal lecture, I want to just summarize some of the points Shaykh Elahi. After he speaks, it just makes me want to give a completely different lecture. One of the things he spoke about was divorces. I deal a lot. There's even Sister Nisa's here. She's a mental health counselor, probably one of the best in the community. And we know the divorce rates go down by 80, 90% when you do premarital counseling. So before you get married, you go to a Sayyid, you go to a Sheikh, you go to a counselor, and make sure you're compatible, making sure you know what that journey looks like. But I've never lost a divorce case where both want to do the work. There was one time, just quick story, where I was in front of my family's gas station, and I'm at the light, and I see this sister just yelling at her husband so much. So I prayed. I said, oh Allah, they're so far away from you. 1 month later, I get a message, this couple wants to meet with you. So I sit with this couple, and the whole time the wife is complaining about the husband, the whole time. And then I paused. I said, you know, you look very familiar. Do you drive this car? He said, yeah. I said, about a month ago, were you doing this? He said, yeah. I said, you know, your husband was very patient that day. I saw a completely different picture, and I prayed for you. By the end of the session, she realized that she was the problem. So many times when we do wrong, we always love to play victim, and usually it has to do with childhood trauma. That's why counselors come into play to saying it's not your husband. It could have been your abusive father or some issue. You need to overcome yourself so you could look at your husband in a different light. One of the things that I do is when a husband or a wife, there was a husband, I got to be careful of the stories I share, that was telling me, you know, he hates his wife, his ex, so much. I said, why? He said, you know, she did so many bad things to me. I said, well, what did you do after? I said, I started drinking alcohol. I was so depressed. I said, okay, then you're no different than your wife who did so many bad things to you, cheated on you, and so on. He got so angry at me. I said, how did it feel when you caught your wife doing what she did? Because now we live in a society where women act like men, unfortunately. Usually when a woman encounters a man that's not their spouse, she thinks of everybody else. A man's brain forgets everybody else. That's why one of the biggest issues we have in our community is temporary marriage. You know that? So one of the biggest issues. There's no merit in temporary marriage. Find me one hadith of the Prophet where he said, this pleases Allah when you're married that you should go and get another wife. So anyways, this is not what we're here for. So I told the brother, I said, you're no different than your wife. I said, why? I said, how did it feel when you caught your wife doing haram? Similar, when a mother checks the phone and she sees that her daughter sends a picture without hijab to somebody, her life stops, her heart, literally. And I said, how did that feel? She said, my life just ended. I said, okay, how do you think your daughter's gonna feel when she sees you, the gambling and the drinking that you're doing? What do you think you're gonna do to her? How are you any different than your wife? That's all I had to tell him, and he changed. He got his business back. I told him, he says, how do I get rid of my friends? I said, ask all your friends for money that you gave them. He said, how do you know I lent my friends money? So you're the only one that has money. And if you're drinking, that means you hang out with a bunch of losers that have no money. So they're going to ask you for money. 2 weeks later, he comes back and he says, none of my friends responded to my message to give me my money back. They won't even pick up the phone. So you got off cheap. So that other couple, the lady that was arguing, well, there's so many stories to share, but brothers and sisters, when you do ready to get married, one of the worst things to do is to get divorced. And usually it's for some of the most foolish reasons. That's why you do need the right type of people to giving you advice. If you're going to find other people who've gone through divorce or marriage issues and they didn't do so well, you shouldn't probably go to them for advice. You don't complain to many people. You complain to Allah and only people that could help you. That's it. So that's just one summary of what the Sheikh Elahi was speaking about. The other is Gaza. I don't know. I just driving here, and before I came, and I see this kid eating sand. He says, "You're not giving me flour." Our scholars said, when we die, we'll be questioned. What did we do for the people of Gaza? We're going to be questioned. I'm asking myself, to my grandchildren, when they read the history, what did we do? So how do we come from a jalas of Imam Hussein, cry and say, oh, we wish we were there? There was a time where I said, oh, Allah, I want to know if I'd be for Karbala, if I would be with Imam Hussein. I want to be tested. And that test that Allah gave me, I realized I'm not ready at all to be tested. And maybe I'll share it in another day. So today I want to share, yesterday the day before we spoke about overcoming the ego. Then we spoke about gratefulness. And one of the best things to be grateful towards is your mother. And if you're not grateful towards your mother, you can't have any blessings in the world. It's impossible to worship Allah but not be grateful towards your mother. My life changed 2 places. Few times. Imam Khomeini's book, Malcolm X, had a huge impact on me. Being here, listening to Hajj Hassanin speak, that changed my life. But I was 12 years old. And my mom told me, come, I need your help. And I said, for what? She said, we're going to lift over the dirt and make it smooth to plant. And I said, okay. So we went outside. It was like hot like it has been the last few days. That's how it was. This was long ago. I hated it. So the next day, my mom calls me, Hassan. I acted like I didn't hear her. I was in the basement. Hassan! I acted like I didn't hear her. So she opens the door, goes through it. I hear the door close. I sneak upstairs to grab toast, cream cheese, juice, and go back to town and watch cartoons or whatever I was doing. But before I do that, I look through the blind and I see my mom with a shovel and her face is full of sweat alone. And a vision came to me and said, you fool, what if your mom were to die right there and you didn't help her? That changed my life. I'm still not a good son compared to where I should be. But I do believe that if my mom calls me, I will be there. There was one time at that same time when I was 13, my mother had a friend come over, keep complaining about her kids because she was a single mom. And she was telling me when they go, she said, you know what her kids are doing? They're going to the pubs. They're going to the clubs. And she doesn't know what to do. There's no father. The father plays a pivotal role. If you notice, who are the people who end up in jail is when there's no father to give discipline. So then, about a year later, they go to the pub, they come home, and they're both inebriated. And they look at their mom, and their mom is screaming to them. The mother was so stressed that she had a heart attack and died. 20, 30 years later, I see them once in a while at the masjid, sad faces. How can you ever smile? And I'm thinking, for what cost that Allah had to wake you up to take your own mother through your misdeeds? How do you overcome that? These are things in my life that have ever changed me. But now I'm looking at what's happening in Gaza, and I'm thinking, how do I see this every day and we do nothing? I prayed. I'm going to talk about prayer. There's so much to talk about today. If I don't get through it, we'll just make this 2 parts, but I don't want to rush. I prayed. I'm the biggest believer in prayer. I've had doctors call me and say, what did you do to this person? They had twins, they had a thyroid issue. We say, we upregulated their genes. How? Through prayer, through dhikr. I've had people say, how did you wake up this person from the coma? They have 2 hours to live. We prayed, we did dhikr. I've had neurologists sit down and say, this isn't the same person. So I believe in possibility, I believe in prayer. 2 biggest healing prayers is dua mashlul, dua kamal. I'm witness to it. I've seen blind people see, paralyzed people walk, and there's so much to talk about that. But I prayed to Allah, I said, please, I want to meet the people, the children of Gaza. Within a few days, there's even Brother Hassan Ayub is here. I was reading an article years ago about inner city children and how they're deprived of God. Said, oh Allah, allow me to speak to them. Hassan Ayub calls me and he says, I had an NFL player to go speak at these kids. He canceled. Can you make it? Within 3-4 days of that parent, I'm telling you, I prayed for this. And now I'm speaking to all these inner city kids about God. And they came to me and says, no one's ever speaking to us about this way. That's the problem with public schools. God's out of the picture. I asked Allah, bring me the children. So, Zaman International, Haji Najat, her husband Ali Bazi has a partnership with Heal Palestine. Said, we have these kids. Why don't you take them for 5 hours? And there's one of the brothers here. And he was there with them for 5 hours. They didn't complain once. We're going to do the commemoration of Aoun and Mohammad. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam witnessed their heads. She had to walk while their heads were on sticks from Sham and other places. Not once can you find a hadith where she complained about the sacrifice she gave about her kids. For Ali Akbar, for her son, yes, but never for her own kids. So when we were there and they brought the kids, they didn't complain for those 5 hours. And then I told the son that one of our helpers that was a student at our school said, why don't you go and have lunch or go and do your other things? You have free time. He says, no, I don't want to leave him. He became such connected to one of the kids. He started following him on Instagram. And the father said that was one of the most impactful things my kid has ever gone through. Prayed for it. And I keep praying, oh Allah, take me to Gaza one day. I want to be there. I want to help such people. Because I believe I'm going to be questioned by Allah. I'm going to be questioned by my grandchildren saying, this genocide was one of the worst in history. What did you do about it? So today's lecture is saying, okay, since we can't go there, what do we do about it here? For what is the biggest jihad that you could have? What did the Prophet say? It's not to go to war. It's the jihad of what? The self. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam was standing in the court of Ibn Ziyad. And she looked at him in the eye. How do you have such strength to look at a tyrant? Even with Yazid, they would pluck people's fingernails out. They would kill people on the spot. It's not the hanging that you think that you take them on a rope and you hang and you die within a minute. You're on there for 3 days and no one's allowed to help you. That's the way they used to hang people. But she had no fear. Look how scared this country's made us. To even post on Instagram, we have fear. To even now, where I have sisters coming to me and say, I have fear of hijab, I want to take it because I'm traveling. Where Sayyidah Zainab held to the rope of Islam. I'm thinking my own faith, how weak I am. So she looked at Ibn Ziyad and said, at the eyes, said, you have not killed anything but your own soul. So don't worry. What's happening in the world, if you look, if not for the Prophet and Imam Hussein, Allah would have destroyed much of this world. But for the mercy given of what's happening, because if you read the Holy Quran, when people behave this way, Allah would warn them. He'd warn them, then He'd wipe them out. But until the 12th Imam's return, that justice is left for the day of judgment. But Allah is saying, what are you going to do? We talked about haqq al-yaqeen yesterday, certainty. You know, most people's lives, imagine you watch a movie 100 times in a row. The first time you love it. What would happen if you watch it 100 times in a row? You'd be miserable. Tell me what's different than that movie you're watching every day and your life. You wake up, you check your phone, you have your coffee, complain about your kids, go to work, go to the masjid, pray, cry for Imam Hussein, go home. Tell me why that's any different than your life of a movie that you watch every day. Why do you think most people don't smile over the age of 35? Because if you're watching the same thing, the same routine, it's the same life. There's nothing new. Notice when you were a kid and your parents said, let's go to Cedar Point. How did you wake up? Excited. Why? Because you knew there's something new. And that's what I do. I'm a faith-based counselor. I team with therapists in the community. And I say, okay, this is what you're going to do. There was a brother that wanted to commit suicide. I've gone to hospitals crying, mom, suicide case. Police are there hoping that he doesn't commit suicide. What happened? I went through a breakup. How much? Brothers and sisters, be careful of relationships. They're the most dangerous thing you could do is get into a relationship. Yet the value of your life is the value of your relationships. So before you fall in love with somebody, make sure you fall in love with who? Allah. Because nobody is responsible for your happiness but you. And when you put another man or another woman and they make you happy, well, what happens that day they can't make you happy? What are you left with? You're left with calling me to come and visit you before you commit suicide. This one brother wanted to commit suicide. COVID hit. I'm thinking of all the things I've dealt with since 2007. You know, this is why our scholars said, stop talking so much about history. Focus on Tawheed. Focus on the Holy Quran, because the communities are not becoming more Husseini-like. Tell me, is our Dearborn Heights community become more Husseini-like? Sheikh Elahi's been doing this for 50 years. Ask him. He would question, why do you think he's building and spending $1 million on a gym? Because it's not becoming more Husseini-like. He's willing to sacrifice. He sacrificed his whole family. I've seen what he's done. And if he didn't come and take the initiative, I wouldn't be doing what I was doing. Salawat. What did I just say before? Somebody help. Before that. Okay, so the brother wanted to commit suicide. Smart. Who said that? You're a straight A student. Yes? Yeah, okay. You remembered. You know, so many of us have thoughts. We talked about thoughts yesterday. Think about how many, because the most addictive thing in society, what's the most addictive thing? No? Hajj Hussam, I always say it. Or to your son. What do I always say? What's the most addictive thing, Daniel? Thinking. Think about as I'm speaking, how many thoughts that you have. It's hot in here. When's it over? Where do I gotta go? And there's a measure speaking. Think about when you pray. How do you know shaitan exists? Bismillahir Rahman. Oh, I gotta think about something. Oh, what am I gonna eat? What happened yesterday? Where do I go? And by the time you're done praying, you don't even know what you just said. So what's the most addictive thing? Thinking. Islam is to be above your thoughts, where you watch what you're thinking. You're not the thinker. You're the one observing the thoughts. And we talked about that the first night. I'll give you an example. I need a volunteer. One sister raised her hand. Come here. Quickly, quickly, quickly. Quickly. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Salawat. All right. So what just happened? I asked for a volunteer. I gave her $20. Now let's say I gave her $1,000. Question, why didn't you raise your hand? But why? There was nobody here that rose hand except her. Why? Now imagine if somebody next to you said, don't raise your hand. Brother Hussein is going to ask you a complicated question. You know, I have an NBA best friend. He was #2 overall draft pick. He said, I had some of my friends that were just good as me, but they were always listening to other people's suggestions and their own stupid thoughts. So when it was 5 o'clock in the morning to wake up, they listened to their thoughts and said, tomorrow, you're good enough anyway. And they didn't even make high school, he said. So imagine the person next to you says, don't raise your hand. Brother Hussein is going to make you look like a fool. And you listened to him and you didn't raise your hand, and I gave her $1,000. Then I asked for another volunteer. Follow this. And then the person next to you again tells you, don't raise your hand. Will you listen to him? Yes or no? No, because they were wrong. So why do you keep listening to your thoughts when they're wrong over and over and over again? And that's what this lecture is about, overcoming yourself. I'm going to talk about those ayahs and how to do it. So this brother that came to me said, I'm having the thoughts to kill myself. I said, okay, can you give me 40 days? And if it doesn't work, you could do what you want. I've never lost a suicide case. One of the first things I do is I give them guilt. Because if you commit suicide, your future generations are going to commit by 3,000%. And the people that leave behind. So anyways, I said, what do you want to do? He says, I'm Iraqi. I went to the mosque. They kicked me out. The girl that I wanted to marry left me. I moved here from California to here. I lost my job, AAA, COVID hit. I got unemployment. It didn't come through. I don't want to live anymore. I said, okay, what do you want to do? He says, I want to work for the state of Michigan because my friends in California worked and it was very secure. That's what I want. But I know God won't give me. I said, did you ask him? He says, how do I ask him? I said, you're going to wake up in the morning. Because the method of asking Allah is just not thought. There's no such thing as positive thinking. It doesn't work. How does it work? It's like when you wake up from a dream and you wake up from a nightmare. How do you wake up? Scared. And you wake up from a dream and it was a good dream and somebody wakes up, say, oh, you woke up happy, but it wasn't real, but your body didn't know that. That is what true prayer is. That's what true dhikr is. That you're not doing it in a dream, but you're doing it, you're feeling it, eyes open. You have no doubt in Allah. I said, can you do that? And if I ever write a book, it will be just on these types of testimonials. Having faith in God more than yourself. So he said, okay, I'll do it. So he'd wake up every day, you give him a dhikr. One of the most powerful dhikr is the unity dhikr. La ilaha illa ant subhanaka inni kuntu minadh dhalimin. And then there's other dhikrs. Wake up in the morning, you say, oh Allah, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to work at this state. And then, because Allah says, when you're thankful, I give you more. So anyways, there's a whole process you give him. And he did it. So every day he would envision working for the state. He calls me, he said, Brother Hussein, this is weird. I go out in the street, COVID, lockdown, no cars, all I see is Cadillac. Because Allah says, I leave no doubts. Allah says, I give you things in the most unexpected ways. Allah says it, Surah Talaq, the 3rd ayah. Allah says, I'm going to give you things that you can't even realize where it comes from. Because how things happen, it's not up to you. You leave it towards Allah. All you do is you focus on the wajib, you avoid haram, and you focus on 1 or 2 things. If you're going to school, you focus on that. There's no need for a 5, 10, 15-year plan. Because the ultimate plan is the day of judgment. That's what you plan for. Everything else can change. So every day he did it. He said, I go on the street, COVID would hit, and all I would see is Cadillacs. I'd turn on the radio, not the TV, and I'd see Cadillac commercials. He said, I've never seen a Cadillac commercial in my life. He said, I would go to dream. All I would dream about for 3 days is the Cadillac car. I said, keep doing it. Allah is showing you something. A week goes by, he calls unemployment to try to get his money. He had no money. We actually had, one of the mosques had to sponsor him to give him food every day. He had nothing. He calls unemployment. He says, I was supposed to get like $5,000 for unemployment because I lost my job. The lady says, well, you waited about 4 hours and I like you. I'm going to take care of you. Here's your money. She asked him a question. She said, do you speak Arabic? He said, yeah, I'm fluent. That's my first language. Says, you know what? I like you. I want to hire you. So now he's working for the unemployment, the state of Michigan, again, helping people with unemployment issues during COVID. So you might say coincidence. But in Islam, we don't believe in coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence in Islam. You are put here for a purpose. Your life is not a coincidence. So then he calls me and he video times me. He says, I'm working from home and I went to go pick up my laptop, and he sends me a video and he picks it up. The laptop, guess what the name of the building was called? Cadillac. Can he ever go back to the person he was? Never. That is Haqq al-Yaqeen. So all of us, to change that movie every day that we're watching, that we get bored of and we get irritated, which leads to divorce and all these other issues, you're one event away where you realize there's so much more to your life. But you have to be willing to sacrifice something. So today, we're going to be talking about that. Salawat. Wow. Time really flew by. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through. I'm going to go about 4 or 5 minutes over. Sayyid. Because he's going to talk about Aun and Muhammad and the sacrifice. And Sayyidah Zainab never complained. Said, oh Allah, I see nothing but mercy. Be pleased with this sacrifice. And she even told them, when Imam Hussein, because every time a companion would come, he'd say, go back. You don't have to go. So Sayyidah Zainab would tell him, when they go, just remind her of the promise you made to my mother, Fatima Zahra. You know, when the people in Gaza are holding their kids dead, oh Allah, I'm pleased with your decree. How does a mother say that? So today, I love to give practical advice. So I'm going to give this story of Surah Baqarah. Why is it called Baqarah? Because of these ayahs. It's all about the Bani Israel. And the Prophet said, if you want to achieve the most merit, read Surah Baqarah. It's the most powerful. It's all about the Bani Israel, but it's all about you. It's for the religious people. So Surah Baqarah is about the sacrifice. So Prophet Musa alayhi salam came. They saw all the miracles. They witnessed it. They had Ayn al-Yaqeen. They saw. They saw all the things that he did for them. Even when after they get to the desert, they said, where's their water coming from? There's no clouds. He said, Allah has promised you water. And then 12 springs came. Why? Because there was 12 main tribes from the sand. They witnessed that. So within these tribes, while they're waiting in the desert, there was a murder. And then in the murder, they went to Prophet Musa and said, call on your Lord. The way they spoke to him was rude. They said, call on your Lord who committed this murder, because it's calling a civil war within us, because every tribe is blaming the other. So Prophet Musa alayhi salam looks at them and he says, call on your Lord for the sake you make plan to what she is. Musa said, he says, sure, because when Musa said to the people, surely Allah commands that you should sacrifice a cow. Now, why a cow? Because what did they worship when Prophet Musa went up to the mountain? A cow. They worshiped the cow. Now imagine us where the Imam comes to you and says, worship your phone. Go to a flip phone for a month. Would we have a problem with that? Worship that friend that you worship. Can you remove them for a month? That bad habit, can you sacrifice? So what is your cow? So look what Allah says. Sacrifice a cow. That's all he told them. So all they had to do is kill a cow. Look how they responded. Look how we respond with arrogance. When your mom tells you to do something, we ask, why? Why not? You know, when your mom tells you to do something, don't respond. Do it. You know, even if you wanted to go to the Hawza and your mom doesn't want you to go, you should not go. That's how much right your mom has over you. So when Musa said to his people, surely Allah commands that you should sacrifice a cow, do you ridicule us? Are you making fun of us? Prophet Musa says, I seek protection of Allah from these ignorant people. Imagine every day you give $10,000 to somebody. Every day. And then 5 years later, they backbite you, they mock you. Would you keep giving them? No. Did Prophet Musa keep giving them by going to Allah? Yes. And they kept ridiculing him. Can you imagine? So we want to make sure that every year we're coming to the Majlis of Imam Hussein, that we decide to change. Otherwise, we're ridiculing him. Because yes, we cry for Imam Hussein, but if you don't leave here saying, I'm going to change this habit about myself, then what's the point? How are you any different than the Bani Israel, the Jews? That's why the Prophet said, don't be the Jews of the Ummah. We don't decide to change anything about you. We think it's everybody else. So the verse continues, said, call on your Lord for the sake to make it plain to us what she is. So what did they do? They started questioning. And I'll go quickly. They said, which cow? He didn't tell you which cow. He said, kill any cow. So what did Allah do? He made it harder for them. He made it so hard that it was one specific cow that some boy had, and they had to pay its weight in gold. And it cost all the tribes their money to find it. Then eventually they killed that cow, and they struck it against the grave. That person rose from the grave. He pointed at the person that murdered him, and then he went back. And that's the story in the Quran. So how did they manifest that different reality? They had to sacrifice the cow. So for you to see a different reality, what does that say about you? I don't care if you're 80 years old. I don't care if you're 8 years old. There has to be something that you're willing to sacrifice for Allah, for the message of Karbala. There has to be. If Sayyidah Zainab, we cry for her and she sacrificed her sons, then what is Allah asking us? We're going to be questioned. Brothers and sisters, I truly feel like I'm living in Yazid's palace, in Ibn Ziyad's palace, while Karbala is happening. Tell me how different that is, that we're watching Gaza every day, and there's not much that we could do. So the least that we could do is make a sacrifice. What is the sacrifice? Our low desires. If there's somebody that you haven't been speaking for a while, text them. If there's something that you need to do and help somebody, help them. No strings attached. Sayyidah Zainab gave her sons and she never complained about it. Can you imagine us if we were to sacrifice? I have 3 kids. Somebody touches my kids, they're seeing the cemetery. I'd have no patience. How does she have the patience? How could ever can I send my kids to that? I'm nowhere near that. And I've asked Allah to test me on that level, and I've failed. So to commemorate, as we cry with the majlis that Sayyid Ali is coming up to say, talk to the person next to you. Say, what is a sacrifice of something that I'm going to start doing or stop doing to get closer to Allah? Have that conversation with the person next to you. Salawat.
Jazakum Allah khair jaza, Hajjina, for again a beautiful lecture and on the theme of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, the lady who gave it all on the day of Ashura, and of course sacrificing her 2 children, On and Mohammad. Individuals who are often mentioned in passing in many of our communities. They are often spoken as a complementary to the main musibah, but of course they are within the main musibah of Ashura. On the eve of Ashura, Sayyidah Zainab, alone with her 2 darling boys, began to speak to them. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam tells her sons that the time will come when their uncle will be all alone. No companions by his side. She tells them to ensure that they go to his aid and do not be fearful. She's basically telling her children, go and sacrifice yourselves for Imam Hussein. And this is an example for all of us with our children to sacrifice for the Imam of our time, which is Sahib al-Zaman. The morning of Ashura, the morning of Ashura came and passed. And the blood of the ashab of Imam Hussein covered the plains of Karbala. Their bodies had been butchered. I can't even begin to imagine the emotions which were going through the head of Aba Abdullah as he stood by watching his companions fall one by one. How could one man cradle so many bodies as their souls departed from their physical body? Now the Imam enters the tent, and as he scans inside the tent, all he sees are members of his household, Abbas besides him. But other than his brother, just children remain. Again, we wish we were present there on Ashura, saying, "Oh, Aba Abdullah, don't be heartbroken, there's more to come. Do not let what you see destroy you. Abbas still remains. Akbar and Asghar are yet to be taken from their mother's arms, but not like any other youth. These were the children from Bani Hashim. They rushed towards the, listen to this, they rushed towards the Imam, all talking one above the other. Imagine the children today, if you open a gift for them, they all come rushing towards the gift. In this case, they all came pleading to Imam Hussein to go and sacrifice themselves on the plains of Karbala. They wished the sweetness of death. And the sons of Muslim, the sons of the brother Hassan, the sons of Ja'far, all unsheathed their swords and begged to be chosen to go on fighting, to go before Muhammad and Muhammad before Allah. Can any of us imagine, to begin to think how the Imam must have felt? How could he choose which nephew to go first? Which nephew to go fight against the army of Yazid? Abbas turns to Imam Hussein saying, "Let me go. How can I let these children go? I can't bear seeing these children go." But Abbas, don't mention your eye, don't mention your eye. Sayyida Zainab comes forward and presents her children to her brother Hussein. She calls out to her brother saying, "These children are a trust from my husband, and we want to be the first of Bani Hashim. How can I face our mother Fatima to Zahra if she asks me why the children of Hussein preceded your children?" Hussein allowed her to prepare her children for battle. Then it was time for On and Muhammad to make their mother proud. Ajarakumullah, it is narrated that On went into the battlefield, first drawing, saying, "If you do not know me, I am the son of Ja'far, the truthful martyr who abides in the illuminated paradise, flying with green-colored wings therein.
and this is enough proof for eminence on the day of Qiyamah. He knew that he was on the right side of truth, and upon his martyrdom he would attain the highest levels. Truly the son of Zainab on fought bravely and killed many men from the enemy lines, until a man came forward and struck on his head with a sword from behind. Usually we hear that the martyrs call out for the Imam's name. They say, "Oh, Imam Hussein," that is the final plea. But this young fragile boy was struck so hard he died instantly. May Allah give you strength, Ya Sayyida Zainab. You watched many tragedies before the day, and now you see your son struck on the head just like your father. Ajarakum Allah. Then Muhammad, the young brother of On, rushed out to the battlefield. Seeing the body of his older brother, he screams out, "I complain to Allah regarding the enemies, a nation who are blind and who spread devastation, who have changed the characteristics of the Quran, the firm revelation and its rationality." Then he put down 10 men from the army of Yazid before he was surrounded by a group of men and he was struck down. Imam al-Hussein rushes towards his nephew's bodies crying, "These are the children of my sister." But the sadness comes now when the bodies are taken to the tents of Zainab. No narration mentions a single tear from Sayyida Zainab's eyes. Wailan, one thing comes to mind: how Zainab was able to remain strong on the night of the 11th, as the heads were put on the spears of her 2 young children. Not one child was killed, but 2. Not one head on a spear, but 2. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu wa ayya munqalabin yanqalibun. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Please stand up for the matam, and if the children would like to join us at the front as well, and the adults, Jazakumullah khair al-jaza. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. يا حسين ومصابة، يا حسين ومصابة، يا حسين ومصابة، يا حسين ومصابة، خويا ويا روحي الها يا حسين. It needs to be much louder than this. يا حسين ومصابة، يا خويا ويا روحي الهادي يا حسين. It needs to be louder, I can't hear. اي زينب وين وتنادي يا حسين، يا وحاشاك لليوم الوعد تنساني، يا وانا اعتقد بدفترك عنواني آية. Children, louder. وحاشاك لليوم الوعد تنساني آية. louder. ولأجل العين ستشابه آية. Make way for the children. وانا اعتقد بدفترك عنواني آية. جزاكم الله خير الجزاء. Your chorus, Zainab's sons defending Islam. Very simple. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Salawat. Inshallah, the children are doing very well. We'd like the adults to participate in the chorus and the latm as well. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Louder! Zainab's sons defending it. Ultim. Zainab's sons Let's do it louder. Zainab's. Like the two prongs of the fiqar, though separate but together, the grandsons of Haydar Karrar, lions of Ja'far al-Tayyar, a life lived so little and short, cut by tyranny and by sword. Zainab's sons defending. Louder! Again, Zainab's sons the army rushed to defeat them, the sword, spears and all the mayhem. They strove to make proud their mother, killing many without water. 3 days water they couldn't drink. Uncle's thirsty is all they think. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Zainab. MashaAllah, Zainab's sons one of the men hiding in fear strikes on with his sword from the rear. Like Ali killed in prior years, Hussein watches his eyes in tears. He reaches on, but it's too late, for on has met his final fate. Zainab's sons defending. MashaAllah, Zainab's. Louder, Zainab's. Seeing his brave brother's valor, Mohammad fights to be martyred, attacking them with such vigor, proving himself a warrior, worthy of his name in action. Alone he destroys large fractions. Zainab's sons defending. MashaAllah, Zainab's sons defending Islam. Zainab's sons then their numbers overwhelmed him. He too became the next victim. A young boy just killed for no sin. Water was not for him destined. He cried, calling Hussein to come. Tell my mother I have now gone. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Zainab's sons Zainab's sons tell mother I had no water. I'll see her in the hereafter, reuniting with my brother. We shall drink from the pool Kauthar. His forehead bore the sweat of death, so young when he took his last breath. Zainab's sons defending Islam. Zainab, mashallah, Zainab's sons oh Hussein, oh Hussein, oh Hussein, Aba Abdullah, oh Hussein, oh Hussein, louder, even louder, oh Hussein, Aba Abdullah. Hussein enters the battlefield with such might. Hussein enters the battlefield with such might. His arms he'd raise, God he would praise with no fright. The service of Allah was his only aim. The service of Allah was his only aim. With confidence, God's the greatest, he'd proclaim. Oh Hussein, louder! Hey, oh Hussein, Aba Abdullah. Oh Hussein again. Oh Hussein. Hey, oh Hussein, Aba Abdullah. The ground all shook, their swords would fall, all stood still. The ground all shook, their swords would fall, all stood still. This man Hussein has such courage and such skill. One by one they would retreat, they did not know. One by one they would retreat, they did not know their strategy. Hussein would now overthrow. Oh, Hussein. Children, louder. Even louder. Aba Abdullah again. Oh Hussein. Oh Hussein. Aba Abdullah. Like the son of Imam Ali, there was none. Like the son of Imam Ali, there was none. Despite masses of enemy, his might shone. In Allah he put his trust and he'd proceed. In Allah he put his trust and he'd proceed. Only stronger Hussein would be with each bleed, oh Hussein. I can't hear. أبا عبد الله أو حسين أو قطم أو حسين أو حسين أبا عبد الله. No spear could break the spirit of Al Hussein. No spear could break the spirit of Al Hussein. The army saw that this lion will not tame, will not tame. Hussein did leave a legacy for mankind. Hussein did leave a legacy for mankind. With justice, his name will always intertwine, intertwine. Oh, Hussein, oh, Hussein, oh, Hussein. Aba Abdullah, oh, Hussein, oh, Hussein, oh, Hussein, oh, Hussein. أبا عبد الله صلوات. جزاكم الله خير الجزاء. Fantastic job. Honestly, very, very good. Inshallah, each night we continue to develop. Please face the Qibla for dua al-faraj. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل وليا وحافظا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل يا رب على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. صلوات.
Ajarakum Allah. Inshallah, we'll proceed to the masjid for Salat al-Jama'ah, followed by light refreshments. If you'd like to sponsor one of our programs coming up, please see me or the office after. And inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow at 7:30.